Hey guys, this is Wire Guitars. Coming at you guys with a 7.08 patch update. There have been several patch, I guess, hotfixes for 7.07 that I did not go over. A little bit of background information about that in case you haven't watched any of the streams. I know I haven't put any videos out about this, but I did kind of take a bit of a hiatus from Dota after the initial launch of 7.07. Played a few games, wasn't really feeling the new patch, and so I took a few months off. Came back about, I want to say, 3, maybe 4 weeks ago at this point. Um, Maybe it's been more like 2 or 3. But regardless, I came back a little while ago. Excuse me, sorry. Been grinding it out. I guess, rekindling my passion for Dota in 7.07D, and now they just dropped 7.08. And as a bit of a disclaimer, I have read over all these notes previously, I guess, last night when they came out, when they dropped. That being said, I guess I kind of just skimmed over them. I read over them. I didn't really, I didn't. I guess I didn't really go too in depth on them. I've have my idea of how some of these changes, especially the balance ones. I know that they did a bunch of. I mean, it's a spring cleaning patch, so of course they're going to fix a lot of bugs and try to focus more on the mechanical side of how the game works as opposed to improving on the balance of it. But there have been changes on both ends, and we will talk about both sides to some degree. I don't want to focus too much on them on how they fixed up some of the bugs and stuff like that, just because honestly, I don't really experience a lot of bugs when I play Dota. It's a pretty clean game. A lot of people, free game, no bitching or whatever. They use that argument to kind of justify any sort of bugs that the game does experience. But honestly, Dota's a pretty well-crafted game. Valve takes their time with the game. Really don't have too many qualms on the bug ends of it. Quality of life changes, however, which I do separate from bugs, they have made as well, and I do appreciate the ones that they made. And we'll talk about all that. But yeah, that's just kind of my disclaimer, and I guess we'll get right into it. So, first thing they changed, as much of a cop out as this may sound, I actually kind of want to completely skip over. They redesigned the player profile, but if I'm being completely and abundantly honest with you guys, I just kind of don't care. And that's not me shaming Valve or anything like that for including aesthetic stuff, or not shaming. I guess there's no way it'd be shaming, but if that's not me trying to throw shade at their player profile, anything. Like, I will probably customize this to some degree or another, but at the same time, this doesn't impact the quality, or this sort of change doesn't really mesh well with the content of video that I try to make. I mean, you guys probably already know if you're watching this video what kind of content I try to make, and this just doesn't really bleed into it in any way. I will go over this though: the gameplay changelog notifications and the last hit trainer. The last hit trainer, as a quick side note, I have seen it done in game. I haven't played with it myself, but it seems like a more extensive version of just like loading out your hero. Not a whole lot of people knew this, but in game, when you're searching for a queue, you can actually load a hero into a bit of a pseudo practice lobby that's a solo like 1v1 mid lane. If I edited my videos, this would be me showing you off to the side here in like a little side video of, like, I don't know, Broodmother like playing in the map itself. It's literally just like a solo mid lane. It's like an island or whatever, and you can buy whatever items you want. I actually personally don't use that tool too much, but I have been known to use it in the past while I'm queuing for games. The last hit trainer seems like a more finessed or stylized version of that you can, as it says, take advantage of while you're queuing for a game. So that's nice. I like this kind of addition. I like, just in general, I guess you could call it not sandbox mode, but like sandbag mode, kind of from Super Smash Brothers Brawl, if you know what I'm talking about, where you can kind of while you're queuing up for a game, warm up and practice your mechanics. I like anything like that. Like, those are, I mean, I even play, as a quick little fun fact about me, I guess, before I play any ranked for the day, I usually play a normal game just to warm up. So I do like additions like this. The gameplay changelog notification. Dota constantly evolves, and keeping track of changes can be daunting. Now you can see which heroes have updates by looking at the top bar portrait of a selected hero on the drafting screen. Hover over the icon to see any changes made since the last time you looked. In addition, there is now a section in the Learn tab with the full changelog. During a game, you can hover over an ability or an item tooltip to see if and how they've changed. I'm not actually, I know this sounds really weird, but I'm not entirely, I guess, convinced of how exactly this is going to work. I have seen in game, see the little information thing there. I've seen this as well, where, for instance, right, mana drain now slows the target by 14, whatever. Let's go ahead and look up Lion. That is a truthful change. Mana drain now also slows the target that it affects, as well as draining the mana of the target. That's a little bit of a spoiler of the actual buffs and balance changes, I should say, that have happened. It says that it will show or display information if you haven't already looked over hero changes, which is cool. But I don't know if this will go away or when another patch comes out and updates. Like 7.08 is bound to have a hotfix patch or a lettered patch, as people call them, at some point, right? It's bound to happen. So if we get like a 7.08b, is it going to and say in that 7.08b it writes over some of the changes in the initial? Sorry, my headset's being stupid. Say in 7.08b, it writes over some of the changes that they made in 7.08. Like, let's say this mana drain change, makes Lion too powerful. So in 7.08b, they have to make it so that mana drain drains mana less consistently over time or something like that. It just drains less mana over time to compensate for this buff. Are they gonna Are they just going to completely eliminate the 7.08 change from the recent gameplay changes and only put the 7.08b, or are they going to put 7.08 and 7.08b, or I have some questions about this particular implementation, but overall I do like it, and I think it's nice. I'm trying to think of any changes that completely caught me off guard in 7.07 when I came back, because as I just was talking about at the start of the video, I played 7.07 for a very brief period of time after it dropped, and then I quit for 2 months, and then I came back, and it's kind of like I never even really played 7.07 to begin with, just because I forgot everything. So things like things like the reworked abilities, some of the reworked abilities, for instance, oh god, I can't remember, like Spectre, literally destroying your vision when she hits you with Desolate, caught me off guard for the first time, because I was like, what the heck is this? And I think there was a hero that got a completely reworked ability that threw me off guard too, because I saw him using it in lane a bunch, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? I wish I could remember it, gosh, because it would help my example so much. But just take my word for it, that changes like that will catch people off guard, and that change log notifications like this that you can see in-game are very nice and handy. Improved buyback notifications, and this coincides with, in my opinion, because this is quality of life, team teleport status, also quality of life, strategy phase item pooling, also quality of life. These three changes alone make just make the spring cleaning patch for me. They could do nothing else and just have these three changes, and I would already love the patch a lot, because these are so helpful. And I'm not trying to special, or I guess I probably am doing this, even though I say I'm not trying to do this, but specifically for off lane, these are very nice, right? Now your supports can give you a ward at the start of the game, so they don't have to worry about. So you don't have to sit there and wait around, because every second in the very start of the game is precious. If you're an offlaner trying to get a ward down, you're trying to make it there and place your ward before the enemy comes and scouts it out, right? It's depending on your matchup, whether or not you think you need to block a camp, whether or not you think you need to get a ward down. But these are all precious seconds, and just having that extra. Not extra, but I guess eliminating any downtime whatsoever is very nice for that sort of thing. Any sort of oh, I hit a slow computer, sorry, I loaded in a little bit late, and now you can't get your ward down because you come there and the Witch Doctor just came. I only say Witch Doctor because of this, but their support just showed up right when you were about to put the ward down, so now you don't want to put it down. Surely I don't need to speak too much to the examples, because the examples are endless, and you guys probably know what I'm talking about. This right here is a nice change. Team teleport status, very nice change. Hold Alt, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if they also have a toggleable option to turn this off, which would be even better, because customization should be at the forefront. Is ideally I can have every hotkey designed the way that I want to. But even if it isn't, this is just a generally good change. I think this is something that most people will stand to benefit from, even if I guess the tiny little boots get in the way of your top screen now whenever you hold Alt. But assuming you're not one of those people that's oh, I hate this change because I can't turn it off, and you're a little bit more lax in understanding when Valve makes changes, this is just generally a good change, because the amount of people that this will benefit, I think, far and away outweighs the amount of people that this will be a con to. I don't really know why I'm talking about this specific aspect of it, but I do know that there are some people that, when 7.0 originally got dropped, the new UI was kind of crappy, and some people were wishing that there were ways to change back to the old way. At the start, admittedly, I was one of those people, because I didn't like the new UI, but I had to I guess it took me a little while, and they made some good updates to the UI as well to make it just generally better as well. But It took me a little while to realize that, like, just in general, the new UI, if you can adapt to it, is probably just generally better than the old UI, just because it's less clutter on the screen, shows you more prevalent information, et cetera, so forth. And this is like advancing on that idea, is knowing when your team can teleport to assist you, or if their teleport's on cooldown, knowing that it's on cooldown and that you shouldn't make as many risky plays in the offlane, or I guess you need to play extra safe, is really nice, because then you know, hey, supports can't rotate. Sorry about that. I don't know why their TP's on cooldown. Maybe they were TP in mid and maybe something didn't work out. Who knows? But just knowing that they can't teleport is very nice. It's a good change. Okay. Prove buyback notifications. So we're kind of going over this last, even though it was, like, I guess, chronologically first. But keep your battle plans up to date with more prominent. I haven't read all of these, I guess, but yeah, just, you can, if you hold alt, you can also see recent buybacks in the top bar after the initial notification is faded. Notifications in the kill feed will be stickied in that area for 45 seconds. This is really good, although admittedly, I don't exactly like fully comprehend this change. When I first saw it, I was like, this is great, but I have to wonder if the whole must skill cap argument will come into play. And I think Valve is aware of that. I'm not entirely sure. If this literally lets you track every person's buyback as they use it, friend or foe, just at the tap of the alt button, then this is a very powerful tool that, in my opinion, changes the way that I guess pubs at least can be played. Pros, I'm sure they got this stuff on lock. They definitely should. If you're playing in a professional team and tournaments are, you got like millions of dollars on the line for some of these tournaments, and you're not tracking every single person's buyback to the second when it's used as a professional player, I think you're doing something wrong. That's just my 2 cents, but whatever. I genuinely do believe that. It's just like Roshan timers. You should always know the time. And this, they added, I'm not going to get too sidetracked here, but I will say, for a very brief moment at the start of, I think, 7.06, they added or maybe it was 7.07, they added a Roshan timer that they took away, which I was really disappointed about, just because it would have been a huge quality of life. But at the same time, I can understand the must skill cap arguments. But changes like this kind of shoot the argument of the must skill cap right in the foot, because these are changes that obviously deter some amount of the skill cap of the game. Whether you want to call it arbitrary or mandatory is completely besides the point. Nonetheless, I'm happy to see changes like this. Dota's already a very hard game, and these aren't things that I would say mark whether or not a player is good, especially these two changes right here. Knowing knowing every single one of your allies' cooldowns on their teleport scroll, not talking about enemies, I'd say memorizing enemy teleportation scrolls is something that you should have to memorize. I do think that's where I draw the line, is knowing information about the enemy team should be something you have to track. Knowing information about your own team should not be something that's a mystery, in my opinion. When it comes to buybacks, though, because that announces the information, right? You don't always see when when one of your enemies teleports out to lane. So you have no right knowing that information every single time. If they teleport within vision, maybe I could see an argument coming up for, like, well, they teleported within your vision. You technically had the chance to see it on the map, but you just weren't specifically devoting attention to it. That's also where the must skill cap argument comes. Is where, like, oh, well, you saw them you had the chance to see them on the map, you just didn't choose to devote your sensory perception towards looking at them while they were teleporting. So that skill cap, like, that's your own attention, your awareness, how much attention you have as part of the skill cap of the game. So you can see where the argument gets a little bit blurry, like where seeing both sides comes into play. But I will say, like, concretely, I support team teleport status 100% showing up just at the click of the alt button. Buybacks, since it announces it to the entire team and enemy team, when everybody buybacks are a global notification. I also think that buybacks should be something that you should see everybody's status of at the press of the alt button. Just to make my stance clear on that, and why I'm happy to see these two changes. And then the strategy item pooling, I've already talked about that, but yeah, I'm obviously very happy about that. Language-based matchmaking and 6 month matchmaking bans. I think these kind of mesh somewhat together, so I'll talk about them both in tandem. Starting with language-based matchmaking. Communication plays a vital role in destroying an ancient. To help improve the lines of communication between teammates, your selected language is now a much greater factor when determining matchmaking. I don't mind this. I don't. But I will say, as a very brief side note, and this is something not a whole lot of people know, so this is why I'm bringing attention to this. I'm not saying this to, like, sound like SJW, cuck, whatever, lib cuck, whatever. Chat pings and like alt pings when you go to ping the timer, although timing whatever. Sorry, if you ping like certain statuses, like your cooldown status, if you alt ping your cooldown status, or if you use a chat wheel to ping certain information, like those sorts of communication relays, apparently those translate through game clients, if that makes sense. So if you're playing the game client set on English and one of your teammates is playing on Spanish, and you chat ping in English like well played, it will say bien trabajo or something like that to your ally instead of well played, right? So with and as you guys should know, chat pings are something that you can communicate a lot of information through chat pings alone. You don't always need to get on the microphone. You don't always need to type in stuff when you're playing Dota. I do believe that with and I know this sounds really weird, but if you use your chat pings efficiently and you have a nice toolkit laid out for them, you don't just like have every single chat ping say like, I immediately regret my decision, right? Maybe you can have one or two funny ones just to raise team morale. But if the majority of your chat pings are like, you know, you custom make them and you choose intelligent and intelligent chat pings that convey relevant information, you can like just with chat pings alone communicate an entire game of Dota to 5 players. I do believe that, and I think that language-based matchmaking isn't something that's as necessary as some might think, and a lot of people don't read into the, I guess, hidden caveats of changes like this, which is always going to be larger queue times. Whenever you shorten and I'm not saying that I'm not trying to say that this change alone shortens the player pool. Sorry, I can shrinks the player pool. But if your language preference will play a greater factor when determining matchmaking, it does imply to me that there's the chance that because your language preferences might be set to English, that implies to me that that the game will try to determine your teammates based more heavily on whether or not they can speak English, or they more so specifically whether or not they have their language preferences set to English, which to me just kind of implies that, excuse me, sorry, that implies to me that the game is trying to, you know, at the cost again of potentially queue times, it is trying to place more emphasis on having a cohesive language experience where there's no barriers whatsoever. And again, I can see both sides to that. I'm just trying to prevent I'm trying to present I can personally see both sides to it. I'm trying to present the argument that I don't think a whole lot of people see. Like, a lot of people will see this change and they'll be like, yes, it's fucking Peruvians, man. I don't need to worry about playing with them anymore or whatever. Okay, look, everybody thought that when region locking or whatever that change was a while ago, where they repaired the South American servers or whatever. A lot of people thought, oh, I'll get no more Peruvians in my games. Guys, I'm just telling you, Russians, Peruvians, everybody's here to stay. Dota's not going. I doubt a change like this will completely eliminate people that don't speak your same language preference in your game. And let's also not forget, right? If somebody doesn't speak your same language, and you're the kind of person to get mad about something like that, you might be a little bit toxic yourself, right? Especially if they're the kind of person to complain about Peruvians in general, just in general, right? There might be a little bit of racism there, a little bit of bias there. If you're trying to tell me that your issue with Peruvians is solely based off the fact that you can't communicate with them, but you are also the same kind of person that when you can communicate with them, when they speak a lick of English, you're sitting there saying, fucking spick, you fucking suck, man. All Peruvians suck at this game. There might be a little bit more to this whole communication thing than just than what meets the eye there. Okay, your argument seems a little bit like it's stated in bad faith. I'm speaking from personal experience here, but generally speaking, I don't have too much of an issue when somebody can't speak English in my games, because there's always like I said, the efficient chat pings. And generally speaking, I think words like yes and no are kind of self-explanatory. So language-based matchmaking, I can't say that term, that phrase, I suppose, isn't something I'm super hyped for. I mean, it's fine. I'm happy to see that Dota's trying to make its game, I guess more team-based, or I guess it's trying to help the team-based aspect of it. But it's not something that I guess I'm happy for that aspect of it. But I'm not gonna I'm not gonna throw a party over this or whatever. And then the 6-month matchmaking bans. This is something that I don't think has divided the community as much as it probably should. Okay, if you're the kind of player who visits low priority once a month, you should see this as a bit of a problem to 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 your game. I don't know. I haven't seen as many people. I've seen a lot of people like kind of happy about this, but I haven't seen the I guess the backlash of that, which I would usually expect to see whenever Valve says like, "Hey, we're going to be punishing you as a little bit more if you do bad things." I don't know. Usually, I expect people to be like, "Well, why should I get banned for 6 months for calling my teammate shit or something like that?" Like shit. I see the whole like shit talking as part of the video game experience or whatever, or I see those like really bad arguments of like of uh of like what is truly toxic behavior. Like, come on, like, you know when you're being toxic, you know when you're trying to intentionally ruin somebody else's gaming experience. But I haven't seen that many arguments of the from that. I have not seen that many arguments when in regards to this 6 month matchmaking ban thing that they are saying that they have no problem issuing to players that are showing extreme frequency of negative behavior. That being said, the person who visits low priority once a month will probably not be ever have to worry about a 6 month matchmaking ban. But it's just, this is like setting the precedent that Valve is really stepping their foot down. We're not going full Riot Games here, but it seems to me that they're putting their foot down and they're saying, hey, we have no problem taking harsher actions towards players that are showing extreme negative behavior on a high frequency of games. And so I guess this change alone might not affect the person that's getting into low priority once a month, but I would not be surprised if in the future we see some kind of action, like more extreme action than simply just, oh, go play low priority for 5 games. I would not be surprised if we saw further action taken into account for those people because of changes like this. This is like setting the precedence. This is like what Nazi Germany started to take over, right? They went and what did they always say? They never, Germany didn't become a Nazi infested state overnight. It was a lot of small changes over time. That's a very terrible comparison. I'm sorry. Good old Godwin's law coming into play there. Redeliver courier items. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't entirely understand how this thing works. It shows like the little meepo icon, the razor icon or whatever. I don't think this will change anything to do with how the courier functions, which is to say that if you hit the courier send me my items button and somebody hits the courier send me my items button, I think it will still screw up the courier and make the courier go on a bad path, and people can still use this to grief, and people can still use this to get like triggered and stuff like that. I think that still exists. I think that there's a button, though, now being implemented. That's how I understand it anyways. There already was a button, but it was kind of frustrating to push because you had to go to the bottom right corner of your screen. You had to right-click, and then you also had to click the hero's name. That was just too many buttons for some people. I could see where some people would get a little bit annoyed by that. I even got a little bit annoyed by it myself and found myself just going on the mic and saying, hey, redeliver the crow, or like, getting the chat ping to reuse the courier. And so I understand where the frustration lied in that system. So I think that I don't entirely understand this change, but what I think this means is that there is now a button specifically on the courier that you can just hit. You can just touch the button once, which will send the courier back to going to whoever's items it was previously delivering, which is nice, but I doubt anybody will ever use it because nobody cares, because the courier is an issue with Dota that's I've been talking about since 7.07, since they nerfed the crap out of the side shop and you basically can't buy anything from it anymore. And so the courier is really overloaded, and whatever. I won't get back on that argument. Custom game arcade revamp. Sorry, but I really just I don't care about these changes. They don't affect Dota. They affect Warcraft 3, really, if you want to read too much that far into it. And so some of you guys like it. Actually, if I'm being abundantly honest with you, I probably should care about these changes, because in StarCraft 1, I've talked about this very briefly on stream, but I guess for my YouTube audience now, you guys can know about that. You guys can know about this little augment of my life, is that for StarCraft 1, especially Brood War, I got really invested in the custom game scene. Like, I was playing StarCraft 1 for like 5 to 6 years, and I think I was pretty much exclusively playing custom games for the entirety of that time. There's some really nice custom maps, especially from the Korean servers, that I was able to get hold of because I made a pretty strong friend base on that game, and I had a lot of fun. So I'd be interested to see if Dota could have a custom game system that's like, I guess, that's taken as seriously and as in depth as the system in StarCraft 1. StarCraft 2 failed to live up to that hype in terms of its arcade system. Because of some mismanagement, in my opinion, because of some mismanagement on Blizzard's end with the popularity system and stuff like that. League of Legends doesn't seem to really care too much about their arcade system, so I'd be interested to see if Dota can take up that mantle. I highly doubt it though. Highly doubt it. I think when people play Dota, they don't really care too much for the custom games. Although I will say there have been some cool custom games that have come to the forefront of Dota, like such as like Overthrow. So I have hope, but I don't know. You know what they say? They say prepare for the best, or hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That's kind of like where I'm at, and I'm leaning more towards the preparing for the worst end. Not to say that it's going to go up in flames. Sorry, I'm not trying to drag this on, but I'm just saying that I doubt anything substantial will come from this. But we'll see. Minimap, neutral difficulty icons. This is nice, but if you know the game, you don't really need a change like this. But I guess this is nice for newcomers, and so that's kind of cool. Yeah. Ready check, cool. Ready check. Sorry. I guess I should explain these to some degree. I didn't really feel the need to explain these because, like I said, I didn't really want to talk about them. It's not really the focus of this video. But the minimap neutral icon difficulty, just basically to show, especially again towards newer players, because veteran players already pretty much know the excuse me. I'd assume anyways that veteran players pretty much know the difficulties of all camps on the map. But for newer players, I guess a small triangle with no sort of indent towards it will indicate an easy camp, and then it just progresses up from there. Where one indent is a minimap, or one indent is a medium camp, and then two indents is a large camp, and then an ancient camp will just be a bolded triangle with an outline filled inside with another triangle, Illuminati, whatever. We got the bounty runes and stuff like that. I think you can also ping power runes. I think that was like something that I'm not entirely sure. No, it doesn't say that. Or, I mean, you could always ping like power runes locations, but I think you could ping them on the minimap now. I'm not entirely sure about that. Just cleaning up the minimap a little bit. No shame in that. No harm in that. I guess shrines are now indicated with a green thing instead of the color of your team, I guess. I don't know. I don't mind these sorts of changes. Nice changes. Ready check, like I said earlier, it's a cool thing, I guess, to add to your. Why am I going over changes like that? Like I said earlier, it doesn't really matter. But color-coded teleport does matter to some degree. Color-coded teleport is, fun fact, kind of how it used to happen, where if somebody was TPing into a lane, you could see the color of their TP as they were TPing in. They changed it to hero icons because people were kind of complaining, and I think they were justifiably complaining. Like, I had a similar complaint that when somebody's TPing in, they TP in, very first TP's in like 2.5 seconds. I should know this exactly, but I think it's 2.5 seconds. I don't think it takes 3 seconds to TP in. So you throw your very first TP on a lane. As subsequent TPs take longer, but you throw your first TP on a lane, takes 2 seconds to 2.5 seconds to TP in, and in those 2.5 seconds, you're probably diving somebody when somebody else will be TPing, right? If you see somebody else's TP under a tower that you're diving, so your attention is already divided. So it's hard enough to sit there and say, oh, somebody's TPing into my lane. I need to identify the color that they're TPing in with, and then I need to look all the way up at the top of my map to where the player icons are, and I need to say, oh, pink, that's Troll Warlord, or oh, blue, that's Queen of Pain. That was just kind of difficult for people, so they added hero outlines. But sometimes the hero outlines aren't always super clear, especially if they have cosmetics. Because it gets a little wonky. Like Phantom Assassin, when PA TP's in, sometimes it can get a little bit weird if she's wearing a bunch of her cosmetics and stuff like that. Like her blade sometimes doesn't always display correctly, especially if she's teleporting in on a different angle. Like it just kind of gets a little weird to see. So adding the color as the outline of the hero as they're TPing in, as well. Adding the color in around the ring of the teleport as well as the hero's outline just kind of is the best of both systems. Like if you prefer the color-based system because for whatever reason that was easier for you to see, then that's great. If you prefer the hero outline system, then you can have that too. I don't know. This just seems like a universally good change that caters to both parties. So I don't see this being bad in any way, shape, or form. I like it. It makes the game more clear and understandable. Makes it less arbitrary. I hate arbitrary skill cap, so I appreciate that. Visual tower damage. As you chip away at your enemy's towers or watch them from afar as they do the same to yours, the visual condition of the structures will begin to deteriorate before crumbling down altogether. Haven't really seen this in effect. Sorry, one sec. I will be interested to see if this is, I guess, what some might say, like, over the top, such that it makes the game a little bit harder to understand or read at the cost of aesthetic, or I guess at the if that is the cost of this change, which seems to be purely for aesthetic reasons. I guess we'll see. I hope it doesn't. I hope that this is a change that is very easy to digest in terms of the information that it throws at you, and that it's purely like a nice little, nice little gesture to the fact that, you are beating the shit out of these buildings, and so they're getting weaker and stuff like that. And that could be kind of cool if that is the case. We got user interface. We'll go over the bold, and then we'll kind of like briefly skim over all these other things, because some of these are just bug fixes. Like, there's nothing to really talk about. So the hero loadout pages now show what scepter upgrades the hero is. I saw that in a stream that I was watching last night. I like it. It's cool. It's also clear to new players, which anything to help new players is nice. The game's very complicated to get into, so making the game a little bit easier to digest and understand is always good. Talents can now show tooltips by pressing Alt. I think what this means is that if it's complicated talent, like Invoker gets Cataclysm at level 20. Oh, what the fuck is Cataclysm? The game doesn't show you any sort of indication as to what a Cataclysm is in its current state, or I guess in its previous state, because the patch is already out. So hopefully holding Alt will explain that a little bit. Anyone in a party can now invite other players directly. I don't see that being bad, or I guess if that was abused, if this becomes abused or mistreated, hopefully they put a change in such that they can, that the party leader can choose whether or not that is the case at their discretion. I don't really know why I'm going over that, though. It's kind of an irrelevant change. Commands now provide a notification to the player that includes your name, whatever. Yeah, here we go. Runes can now be pinged via the minimap. That's kind of cool. I like that. Again, it just kind of, this way I don't have to look at a rune with my camera specifically just to ping it. I can ping it on the minimap, which is nice. And you can already, this is a fun fact, you can already see what rune is what via the minimap as well. So if a haste rune spawns in the top lane and you have vision over it, you can see the like redness of the haste rune through the minimap, as well as if you obviously scroll over it with your camera, which is nice. I like that. That was a change they implemented like a patch ago, and I like that a lot. That's, again, just makes the game more. I don't know. This is like a personal thing, maybe. I think it's for everybody. Obviously, that's why they call it quality of life, and that's probably why these changes are getting implemented into the game, is because these just generally help people. But I really get a hard on for it. I don't know. I enjoy it when the game is easy to digest. This is one thing I will praise League for. Is their game is so easy to digest and understand. It really does cater to the new player experience. And for veterans alike, you might think like, oh man, like if you want an easy game that's easy to understand, just go play League of Legends. No, dude. Like I've hit 6K multiple times. I'm currently at like 5,800 MMR. I'm a player that I'm to my own credit, right? Not trying to like toot my own horn here, but I'm far and away above most players out there in the solo matchmaking system. And I want a easier to digest game. It just helps every party involved, in my opinion. The new player experience as well as the veteran player experience alike, because arbitrary things such as having to scroll my camera over a certain rune to see what rune it is. That you could argue that comes in with the you could argue like the awareness thing, like you should have your camera control should be and your I don't know, it's just like that, it's information that's on your mini map, especially if you have vision over it. I don't see any reason why that should be something that you have to manually scroll your camera over just to see. So these are arguments that, again, coming from my own admission, I think that these should be made into the game, and so I appreciate it when they make these changes. And I wish they'd make more of them and focus more on that. They do, obviously, when it comes time for spring cleaning patches, but it seems like they ignore them throughout the rest of the year, focusing more on like bugs and then content updates. I'm glad that they do them at all, right? Just let me say that I appreciate that we do that, that we have any time of the year that we ever devote to making the game a more digestible and easier quality of life experience. But I guess I just wish that it would be something that we like constantly focus on. But regardless of that, we got ability icons now show a progress overlay for cast points once the button is pressed. I saw that. I like that a lot. That's something that you can now very easily complain about when you almost got your anti-mages blink off or your quaps blink off when somebody's about to come up and stun, and then they stun lock you right when you're about to land it. It's something. It's you can be like, the green bar was almost to the full, or you don't just have to say, she looked like she was about to blink. You can say the green bar, because it's a little green Pac-Man thing that fills up as the cast point is occurring. I'd imagine for longer cast points, this takes a lot longer to fill up. Like a good example is like Brewmaster, or like even Queen of Pain on her ulti Sonic Wave. I think is what it's called. It takes like your Scream of Pain maybe. I don't know. Scream of Pain, sorry. Yeah, Sonic Wave takes like almost a second just to cast. I think for cast points like that, it'll take a lot longer to fill up. I just in general, this is a nice change. Although I could imagine a world in which it gets a little distracting if somebody maybe has like a short attention span or like just their eyes might fixate on that a lot. Because in Dota you're casting a lot of spells. You know, how many spells do you think you cast of like Sticky Napalm as a Bat Rider throughout a game? Well, that has a very slight cast point, and you're gonna see that green bar fill up a lot. I don't know. Improved input latency for low-end machines. Nice. Unit tooltip now shows status resistance, which is a little bit odd. I thought that was always showing on your status on your unit. I guess I'll have to play and see where that shows specifically, but interesting. Lifetime and recent game stats are no longer shown to non-friends. Okay. So that when you get into a game and somebody looks at your profile because you want to play core, and they look at your, because it's like the one game that you want to play core, and then somebody in a solo matchmaking game looks at your past 25 games and they say, oh my god, 200 GPM core player, and you're like, dog, I've been playing support my last 19 games. Now they no longer get to use that argument. They have to go straight to your Dota buff to see. And no, most players don't go to Dota buff. They don't go that extra mile, but they've been known to do it before. But anyways. I like that change. Add an option to bring Dota 2 forward when a match starts, and when picking phasing starts. I think that's already an option. And this too, to bring Dota 2 forward when a game is unpaused. I think that's already an option. I could be wrong. I know it definitely gives you like an application notification, which is to say, like, I know that the Dota thing on your dock kind of starts blinking when the game gets unpaused. But yeah, I guess I just don't know how far they take this. Alt click to the sun and moon to indicate how much time is left on. Yeah, these are also, I believe, already in the game. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, you might be like, oh, well, if they're on the patch notes, obviously they aren't, but I feel like they are. I don't know. Holding Alt now shows Sentry Ward AoE. Disassembling is now allowed while dead. Kind of cool. Unit tooltip now shows movement speed base plus bonus. Consume tomes. Yeah. Again, some of these we're gonna just have to skip over. Improve UI performance, like what does that even mean? Turning base, when returning to base with your items after failing to deliver due to courier death, courier will not put them back in your stash. Okay. Wards will no longer combine. Yep, that's a good change. Should have been in the game a while ago. Ever since they made it so that you can combine wards and sentries into one thing in your inventory, this has been an issue that they finally now resolved. But I'm glad that they did it, eventually. Better late than never, as they always say. Better 2 years later than never, I guess. Kappa. Gameplay. Walking into the shop now clears your backpack item, moves cooldown. Yeah. A lot of this stuff is kind of just weird, like, fixed homing missile taking one extra hit than intended to kill. Like, how am I going to talk about that? Okay, good shit. Good stuff fixing your shit. I appreciate it, Valve. Same thing with all these fixed. Yeah. Like I'm not saying who cares in such a way that I'm trying to imply that like none of this matters. I'm just saying like it's hard for me to talk about these. So whatever. Good job. Wars now require a constant 2 hits to kill. Nice. Oracle buffs kind of in an indirect way, as well as any other hero that has like 30 base damage but is a ranged support that's expected to go around D ward. Just makes your life easier. Nice. Tier 1 tower armor aura increased from 1 to 2. Makes it a little bit easier to defend against this constant, like, 10-minute death ball meta that we've got going on. Those Tier 1 towers are important, guys, so Valve's trying to make it so that it's easier to defend. Bounty runes, base EXP reduced from 25 to 0. I think what this means is that bounty runes are now, because I think they still scale in terms of, like, it's the base got reduced to 0. So every bounty rune after the initial one that spawns at 0 does give some EXP. The initial ones at 0 give 100 gold, no EXP. Then the ones after that give, I think, 50 gold and 25 EXP, if I recall correctly. Now they give 50 gold and 0 EXP, but they still scale, I believe, the EXP. Like the EXP, there's still an EXP growth from bounty runes, which is to say that like later on as more bounty runes spawn, you will get a little bit of EXP from them. But primarily now they're just going to be a source of gold, which is to say that roaming, got a little bit more of a hit here. 25 EXP is not nothing for sure. So there's that. The gold growth increased from 2 per minute to 4 per minute. So they're definitely worth a lot more, a little bit more in the gold department, just less in the EXP department. And this kind of further pushes that change. Roshan now has 25% status resistance. Actually, a change that when I first saw, I was like, I don't know how much I like that. I don't know how much I like that change because I always enjoyed that supports could offer something to Roshan via their crowd control. Like, because obviously they're not going to be huge damage dealers unless you're a fucking broken shaman, who just drops his own wards at Roshan and does a lot of damage through that. But no, I do like this change. Supports will still offer things to doing Roshan as an objective. Vengeful Spirit has a damage aura, and then she also has Howl, which reduces armor. Now it's just that Magic Missile will last 25% less time on Roshan towards keeping it stunned, which just really means that Roshan's going to get the opportunity to hit you more, bash your cores more if they're the ones tanking Roshan, and it's going to slow Rosh down if Roshan's not perma crowd controlled while you're taking it. It doesn't diminish, or it doesn't eliminate the utility of having a support that can assist at taking Roshan because they have long crowd control. It just diminishes their utility, which I guess is a lot. So this helps. Makes it harder to permastun Rosh. Aeon Disc health threshold reduced from 80 to 70. I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't think I've ever bought Aeon Disc, so it's hard for me to speak as to whether or not this change is a positive or a negative one. My initial impressions are that I feel like it's a nerf though. I don't know. I think of it from the perspective of like Abaddon's ult. Like Abaddon's ult auto activates at like 400 HP, which is oftentimes like a very small percentage of your HP pool, like 25%. It's very small compared to Aeon Disc. And then I think, does the auto activation of Abaddon's ult benefit him or hurt him? Well, people usually play around it, but if Abaddon's ulti activated at like 70 or 80% of his health instead of like, what it is currently, which is 400 HP, which is often 20 to 25%, would that help the hero the way he plays? Because Abaddon's ulti is very comparable to Aeon's discs. Like Aeon discs is a hard purge that you put on yourself, which even purges stuns. Same thing with Abaddon's ulti. Aeon disc prevents all damage. Abaddon's ulti obviously heals him for all damage. So it's not exactly similar, but it's pretty similar. I don't know. Reducing the health threshold that Aeon disc procs on, I don't know. That's probably a buff. The way I read it is kind of as a nerf, but maybe it's a buff. I don't know, man. It's probably a buff. I don't see this item needing nerf, so I bet the way Valve interprets it to be is probably through a buff, but it just seems so slight. Battle Fury got nerfed a little bit. Creep bonus no longer works with illusions. Rip PL, Battle Fury Kappa. No Kappa, actually. I think that will be the change which makes PL... I think that's like the deciding factor. Is his illusions no longer get 60% bonus damage versus creeps. They get nothing, and then PL himself only gets 50%. So I don't think PLs will be buying Battle Fury anymore. They never got the cleave, to be clear, but they did get the bonus damage versus creeps, so which I think was still substantial enough that was what caused him to buy it in the first place. I do think that will be the change which rips that. Cooldown on BKB got rescaled to flat 70. I like that change. I hated the stupid meta of Shadow Fiends getting a BKB and then cooldown reduction talent and then Octarine core and then having BKB up like every 20 seconds. It was stupid. BKB, just in general, I think always needs... I'm not going to say nerfs, but it's an item that is very powerful, and this change, I think, seeks to benefit the item in terms of the health of the game and the place of the item, too. Yeah, I like that change. Blink Dagger got nerfed by 2 seconds. Good. Blink Dagger also a very game-defining item, which, I think Valve accepts, or whoever is in charge of the changes, fucking Ice Frog, whatever. I think Ice Frog accepts that Blink Dagger and BKB will dictate are items that dictate the balance of the game. So changing them isn't like, it's not like you should balance them in the from the perspective of like, oh, I want it so that BKB becomes a situational item. No, I mean BKB technically is a situational item, but it's a situational item that is not hard to make a situation for. Same for Blink Dagger. Like, there are some games where even as Enigma, like you typically go blink pretty quickly on Enigma, maybe not first item, but it should, and most Enigmas consider it like a second or third buy. But there are some games where it's like, man, I don't need a Blink Dagger this game. I'm playing like Battle Enigma. I don't really need to worry about hitting the perfect black hole. I need to worry about being in the middle of a team fight, providing a bunch of auras, and casting my spells. And so Blink Dagger is more of a luxury item here than it is a core item. Changes like these don't hurt that style nearly as much, in my opinion. And if anything, it makes it more appealing to just kind of skip over Blink Dagger. You can make more of a case for it. But yeah, like I said, BKB and Blink Dagger I think are deserving of these sorts of changes, but you can't axe the items completely, which these changes, in my opinion, don't do because they're just too powerful of items and they're too core to the way the game is played. You'd be changing Dota if you nerf those items into the ground. Enchanted Mango, 25 more mana, feels good, man. Same thing with Fairy Fire, not 25, but 10 extra HP, feels good, man, as well. Force Staff, time it takes to reach the full distance increased. An odd nerf, but the one it needed, maybe, I don't know. Cooldown increased on Hurricane Bike to, I believe, be identical to Force Staff, so rip. Items probably aren't, these two items probably aren't dead, but, does hurt. Meteor Hammer got its cooldown, like, almost axed. Like, that's a lot of time when you think about 12 seconds. I don't know if that'll be the buff to, like, bring it into play on more heroes beyond just Nyx Assassin, but it is a nice buff for sure. Soul Ring got its cooldown, or its recipe increased ever so slightly. It did need the nerf. Soul Ring is such a popular item on so many strength-based offlaners, and just heroes in general. Like, Soul Ring is a really powerful item. Spirit Vessel, similar story. It got its recipe cost increased, except this time by 150. Also a very powerful item. Not surprised to see it nerfed. Alchemist got some, I believe, buffs here. We got a bit of a base attack time increase on his, or I guess improved, so decreased on his earlier ranks of Chemical Rage, making him a bit stronger of a DPS in core when he's activated his Chemical Rage. Talent buffs, I don't really want to talk too much about those. I'm not an Alchemist player. You probably don't watch my content for Alchemist content, anyways. Sleight of Fist hero damage increase on Ember Spirit. These are this is not something that you can just flat out ignore, like as hero damage scaling. Like, this is not, when Sleight of Fist is max, which typically is not first by the way, but maybe this opens the pathway for a Sleight of Fist max build. I doubt it. But when it is max, you're getting 20 extra hero damage. I wonder how that scales, because I think it's hero bonus damage. I think what Sleight of Fist does is it applies an auto attack from Ember Spirit, and then it also gives him now 100 extra damage on top of that to two heroes. I'm not entirely sure if that's how it works, but I think that's how it works. And if that is the case, then this change won't mean that much. But if this gives him just a straight up bonus extra 100 damage on his auto attack, then this could be significant, especially when you're talking about the interaction with things like data lists and stuff. So, interesting change. A nice little buff to him. Enchantress, base damage reduced by 3. Probably the nerf she needed. She's a hero that in lane just right-clicks you a bunch. And so this change will add up to a lot of damage over time as you're right-clicking heroes in lane. Very graceful nerf, too. It's not like they axed any one of her abilities or the way she's played. It's just like, hey, like, she's still probably a very viable hero in the position that you still play her, but she's just a little bit worse at doing what she does really well. Jakiro reduced attack backswing from 0.5 to 0.3. Okay. Probably doesn't change too much if you're canceling your attack animation as Jakiro. Not entirely sure, though. Blade Dance got its damage reduced. I saw a lot of people complaining about this. Juggernaut isn't really a late game core, so I think this change is very much in line with the way the hero's kind of meant to be played. If you're playing Juggernaut with the intention of scaling into the late game, you should really consider picking up a different hero that has a crit, or whatever. I don't know. Whatever makes you want to play Juggernaut, you should try to find that in another hero, because Juggernaut is not a late game scaling core. Yes, he can tear some heroes up with like 5 or 6 items that are carry based, but he's not the best farmer. And he's certainly not the best hero killer. There's better heroes to do everything that he does. Okay, what he provides to a team is healing ward. Okay, and Omni Slash is pretty good too. Okay, if you're drafting Juggernaut and you're like, man, I just want a guy who cuts people up with swords, like that's my go-to hero design in Dota 2, then I implore you, like, man, I can't actually think of too many other heroes that use swords in Dota, but I'm sure they exist. Pangolier, or nah, I don't play Pango for that reason. But I'm just saying, Jug is a mid-game hero that focuses on taking objectives with his team, through healing ward being his primary contribution, which is often why you see Jugs max healing ward second in favor of their crit after they've maxed Blade Fury. And I think this change, by the way, also encourages that playstyle more. So a nice change. I like it. And he did need a nerf, so I don't mind it. Split Earth got its mana cost reduced pretty heavily. 20 at all ranks, 25 at second rank, 20 at third rank. Yeah, very good buff to Leshrac. 20 is not an insignificant amount of mana, and we'll touch up on that when we go to Oracle, I promise. Lena's base int got increased by 3. This is also her base damage, as well as obviously her mana pool by like 36, and then her spell amp by like not even close to 1%, and then her base MR by not even close to 1% as well. But nice little buff to her base damage for sure. And the base damage random variance reduced from 18 min-max spread to 12, which is also nice. Damage variance is kind of an I don't want to say an annoying thing in Dota. It definitely makes sense on some heroes like Chaos Knight, but like PL has a really wicked base damage variance as well, which I've never understood. So just makes her more consistent as a last hitter. Probably helps her out mid a lot. We also got Lion Drain, the change that we talked about earlier, Mana Drain on slows. Nice meme. I don't think too much of this change, but it's a nice buff for sure. Lycan Shapeshifter cooldown got increased somewhat dramatically at later ranks. Early ranks, not as much. But then his base armor got reduced by 1. I don't know if these changes are enough to like rip Lycan out of the 80%, 50%, whatever win rate or insane win rate that he has in like 5K plus games. But I do think that these are good changes, especially the base armor reduction, because that hero needs counterplay in lane. Like you need to be able to bully a Lycan out with something beyond just a dual lane that you heavily commit a team to. There should be clear counter picks to Lycan in lane that you shouldn't need to draft again. Like you shouldn't need to draft an entire team around. You should be able to pick 1 or 2 heroes and be like, okay, we got the Lycan lane on lock. Like this hero is good enough to deal with Lycan, and the base armor reduction does help a lot in terms of encouraging that. Medusa cast range on Mystic Snake got nerfed. Some of her talents got buffed a little bit though to maybe compensate. I'm not entirely sure. So cool. Cool beans. Morphling got his morph cast range, which is his ulti, I believe, increased from 600 to 1000, which is really nice. And then it got its mana cost reduced significantly, especially at earlier ranks. And the cast point is completely removed. These are really nice buffs to morph, like not the hero, but the ability itself. And then obviously the hero subsequently. I don't know. I guess it must have always felt like a somewhat awkward ability to use, and now hopefully it can feel a little bit less awkward. I know against with certain heroes it can be outrageous. Like I think it works in the way that I think it does with Earth Spirit, which is you get your 6 stones and you can just play Earth Spirit for a bit. Nice changes, I will say for sure. At least specifically to that ability. I don't know. I don't like Morphling metas though when the hero defines the meta because he's a very powerful. When he's strong, he's like kind of dumb. So we'll see. We'll see if since the rework he becomes a little bit less dumb. Nature's Prophet got a bit of a buff here, a pretty good buff at earlier ranks. I'm kind of confused as to why. I didn't feel like the hero needed buffs. I thought he still did his offlane thing pretty well, but whatever. Omni Knight got a bit of a nerf here, especially on the not especially on the but the Degen Aura cast range. 25 may not seem like a lot, but Degen Aura is a powerful ability that if you ever get caught into, you will have a very hard time getting out of unless you have a movement speed. Unless you have a movement based ability. So, nerfs like that certainly hurt that whole like Omni Knight chase you down with a radiance kind of thing. And then the purification cast range, usually they just use it on themselves like pieces of shit. No, I'm just kidding, but I don't know. Nice little 50 range buff. Probably won't change much. Oracle, Fortune Zane, mana cost reduced significantly. Okay, this is 35 mana, guys. This is not nothing by any stretch of the imagination. Wait, am I crazy? 10, 20, yeah, 35 mana, right? Yeah, for sure. Okay. It's 35 mana cost reduction. That's a huge amount. Big Oracle buffs. Fortune's End isn't. It's not Purifying Flames, so it's not like it's an ability you're going to be spamming out hardcore. But that's a lot of mana to take off of any one given ability. So big buffs. Rolling Thunder got its cooldown increased, especially at earlier ranks. No, actually at all ranks. Just like a static plus 20 at all ranks. Nice nerfs to Pango. I think he got a little bit overtuned last patch, so. Nice little change there. Rock got rescaled. I don't actually know why they nerf Pudge here ever so largely. But I guess his level 1 rune and subsequent ganks afterwards were always a little bit too powerful when he could almost guarantee that he'd be standing right on top of somebody, especially if you walk out from the trees. Pugna got a little bit of a buff, especially this. Like, this is just straight up late game buff to late game Pugna's life drain. Like, you don't need the scepter to increase the damage anymore, but it'll still be nice for the cooldown. Shadow Fiend, this is such a graceful nerf. I love this nerf so much because it's so, like, I don't think it rips Shadow Fiend at all, but it certainly hurts, like, abusive playstyles of playing the hero, such as, like, picking Clockwork SF and then farming cogs at the start of the game. But even in addition to that, like, this just hurts his early game oppressive lane style of, like, getting a bunch of souls through raises, through using all of his mana as a resource to accumulate raises early on, and then using his high base damage bonus to abuse his lane opponents. Now it's like, especially if you gank him, like he's gonna feel some very weak power curbs because he's gonna lose all of his souls, and then the max souls that he can get back to is very much dampened. I don't know. For whatever reason, I vibe well with this nerf, but we'll see what it does to SF. If it completely rips him, then I won't be happy with that, because hero deserves a place. Every hero deserves a place. Shadow Shaman, also a very graceful nerf. Ether Shock got its cooldown increased at earlier ranks. Completely understandable. Its total damage got reduced pretty significantly at earlier ranks. But I don't... Or no, wait. Sorry, this is Shackles. I thought this was Ether Shock. Okay, never mind. Yeah, a completely graceful nerf. In fact, I would say a little bit too safe. I think Shaman probably needed more nerfs. But I don't know. Shackles basically does no damage at level 1, so you're pretty much using it purely for its CC component. So I don't know. A nice nerf to Shaman. But like I said, I think a little bit safe. I think they could have gone a little bit harder on Shaman, and he would have been fine. Tinker got his base movement speed reduced by 15, guys. That's a fuck ton of movement speed to lose. Underlord felt this, or Spirit felt this. Now Tinker will feel it. I wonder if this will make him a little bit too vulnerable as a mid hero to ganks. I'm skeptical about that because March is so powerful at deterring ganks and dives, but I don't know. This is a pretty big nerf. I don't dislike it though, because the hero needs some kind of drawbacks before he gets bots. And this nerf is completely in line with that. I remember when I was first picking Tinker up to learn him, I was always a little bit surprised, like thinking this hero always buys bots, and yet his base movement speed is actually like above 300. Like that's kind of weird that he's that quick as a base hero. Well, I mean, it's not super quick, but 305 base movement speed isn't nothing. Tiny got his toss cooldown increased by 3 seconds. I don't think that's going to hurt Tiny as much as I think Tiny needed to be hurt, but whatever. Tusk can no longer use Snowball while rooted. A nice graceful nerf in my opinion as well. Snowball is a very powerful escape mechanism, so especially with the Blink Dagger. Being able to shut him down. I mean, I have a 6k Tusk player that I'll confirm this nerf with, but I think this is an alright nerf. I don't think this is anything too major. Wind Ranger got a nice little 1 run buff. 10 mana is not nothing for sure, and then her talents got buffed a little bit. I think. I don't know. +1 shackle shot target seemed a little bit optimistic. I think plus 0.5 seconds on the shackle shot duration, if it was a successful one, I think is an overall better buff. So, anyways, that was pretty much. I think that was every single change that was at least as defined by me a meaningful change that Valve has implemented towards not only obviously their game in terms of the balance of Dota 2, but also the system at which you play games through, such as like quality of life changes, and then also community driven like changes and whatnot. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling now, so I'll probably be getting out of here soon. I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Again, I have been streaming a lot recently, not making too many videos, but I will try to. I do have a few interesting ideas in mind for some videos that I want to start making. I know that I always say that, but I think this time I'm actually going to do it, and so I guess be on the lookout for those. Thank you very much for watching, and I love you all. Have a good night or day.